Hey Gooners, this is Alan Smith.
This is Kevin Campbell.
Lee Dixon.
Colin Lewin.
It's Gary Lewin.
Charles Watts.
Dan Potts.
James Benge.
Danny.
Tom from the Gooner Talk here.
Ryan O'Castle.
Simon Collins. You may know me from the Evening Standard.
You may know me for my time at Arsenal.
You may know me from Arsenal or even the Hybrid Squad.
I'm a Birdcat Wonderland.
Being that physio, sat on the bench next to Arsenal with my rubber gloves on.
The former Arsenal physio.
The Emirates press box, from writing, from Twitter.
From goal.com, from Twitter, from YouTube.
Football is the beautiful game and it brings us all together.
Sometimes there are things even more important than wins and losses.
And yes, even transfers.
Every 30 seconds, someone in this world gets diagnosed with blood cancer.
The Leukemia and Lymphoma Society works towards curing blood cancers
and provides support to families currently dealing with these diseases.
Gooners vs Cancer was started in 2017
by a lifelong Gooner who lost his father to leukemia way too young.
Since 2017, Gooners v Cancer has raised
over $75,000 for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society.
And we need your help to keep the fundraising going in this year's campaign.
Every donation helps.
Every donation helps.
Every donation helps.
Every donation helps.
No matter the size.
And every donation enters you into the Gooner raffle,
where you have a great chance to win amazing Arsenal prizes,
including game tickets, stadium tours,
signed men and women's shirts,
and maybe a retro signed shirt by yours truly, Lee Dixon.
Me, yours truly.
Yours truly, Super Kev Campbell.
So much more.
It's easy to take part.
Just go to www.goonersvcancer.com
and donate directly to the charity.
Pick the raffle prizes you want to enter to win,
and wait for the drawings at the end of the campaign.
Again, that's www.goonersversuscancer.com.
We all know that victory grows out of harmony.
Victory grows out of harmony.
Victory grows out of harmony.
With your help, we'll be victorious against blood cancer once and for all.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you for your support.
Thanks for your support.
Thanks for your support.
Thank you for your support.
All right, so let's do the introductions now. Let's not wait till the end. Appreciate you guys coming on tonight, and we have a dynamic duo yet again. The Arsenal Opinions made up by 3 individuals, Johnny Cochran as well.
Yeah, Johnny's in England at the moment. It's 3 a.m. there, so he couldn't make this one, but he would have been on here for sure.
I could certainly understand that. You know who else is up at 3 a.m. is a lot of the chat. I'm seeing a lot of names who I happen to know are in Europe right now. So thank you for staying up late with us.
This gives us further evidence that he's just got an attitude problem, really, and should have been
breaching the non-negotiables.
Yeah,
I mean, we're gonna have to have a serious conversation.
Yeah,
we could go very quickly.
We suspected this was the case.
I'm going to make a prediction, and he is not going to appear on the next 4 podcasts. He's not even going to appear up the bench in the next 4 podcasts of ours. So yeah, we've got Pedro, aka LeGrove, joining us for the first time. Appreciate it. And is it only you that's allowed to say this, or can I say man like Kandela?
You can say that.
You can say man like Matt Kandela for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Matt Kandela, Pedro, thanks so much for joining us. Again, if you're in the chat, please donate to goonersvcancer.com and get yourself entered for some pretty amazing prizes, which we're going to continue to draw. Our next one will be at the end of this hour. And this is the first time we formally met. I mean, I have noticed that you're both, in America, sporting traditional American accents. One in New York, one in St. Louis. So, tell us a little bit about how kind of you came to land where you've landed and why.
Matt, you want to go first?
Why don't you go first, and then I'll tell the funny story about how I first met you, because I think that's a good story.
Sure. I came to America 9 years ago. I came via advertising, and now I work in football for an MLS team in St. Louis. We're winning 2-0 right now against LA Galaxy. Get in. Been writing LeGrove for 16 years. It was 16 years, September 6th. I heard Elliot talking about making some story about drug dealing. I guess my story is not too dissimilar. I started writing LeGrove because there wasn't enough daily content. It was just Arse blog. East Lower would come in every now and then. Gunner blog was a great blog, but he wasn't daily, so I wanted to come in with the daily content and share my thoughts on transfers and all things Arsenal. So that's been going for 15 years, and then the Arsenal Opinion podcast has been going seriously for about 3 now. Matt?
Yeah, I'm a huge Arsenal fan. Had a season ticket for 20 plus years. But living in New York, obviously miss being able to go to the games every single week in person. But you do feel like you grow a whole nother community of like-minded Arsenal fans. I feel like here it's like, oh, you should meet so-and-so. They're an Arsenal fan. And I got added to a WhatsApp group, and someone posted an article that was on LeGrove into our WhatsApp group. And my immediate reaction upon seeing this article posted was like, why the hell would I read anything from LeGrove? LeGrove is literally the Daily Mail of Arsenal blogging. And at the time I was a staunch pro-Wenger supporter. Pete was on the other side of the argument, suggesting that Wenger's best years were behind him and that maybe we should be looking for, he was a bit more prescient than I did. But somehow we met in New York and we bonded over that. And he certainly really affected my opinions around Arsenal. And we started the Arsenal Opinion out of a love for Arsenal and an opportunity to bond every week around a game. And the rest is history.
Amazing. And by the way, I'm sorry, while you guys were talking, we had a little bit of I forgot that Eoin's shift was over, and so we've replaced Eoin with someone decidedly less Irish. Mike Herz, welcome to your maiden appearance on this year's Podathon, and you'll be joining us for the next 4 hours or so. So Mike, good to have you.
Thank you so much, man. I can't wait. It's always a privilege to be here. Let's get talking about Arsenal. I don't think you've done that enough today, Mike. So
no,
I feel
so
like
much.
we should try to come up with some Arsenal-related subjects today.
Hour 9 out of 27. But here's the thing. Last night I got to talking to Pedro. I was in the middle of kind of writing some outlines and some talking points and stuff, as I like to be prepared. And he pretty much said, me and Matt are just going to do the podcast. So I am
God,
and
my beer here
with 27 different segments to coordinate, or 25 different segments to coordinate. That was the best news I had heard all week. So we are now guests on a Podathon version of the Arsenal Opinion, and I will hand it over to you guys per our discussion, and you take it away.
Okay, yeah, all right. So we're gonna treat this like we would any Arsenal Opinion podcast. I don't have access to the music, but guys, it's great to be on the podcast. We're really excited to be raising money for cancer. Mike, do you just want to give us a little bit of a lowdown on the cause? I've just put a tweet out, so for new people coming in, I'd love to hear a little bit more about it. I know that you've probably done this. You're going to do this 27 times, but I'd love to hear it again.
Oh no, that's fine. I mean, the more chance we get to talk about it, the more different ears are hearing about it, and it's always a funny English thing. I've learned that it's an English thing and not just the wrong way of saying it. But we're not raising money for cancer, Pedro, because I mean, cancer has one of the largest war chests of aggression that you could possibly have. They don't need more money. We're raising money against cancer, but it's the Leukemia Lymphoma Society became very important to me about 14 years ago when my dad was suffering from leukemia, ultimately passed away in the year 2010, way too young, in his mid 60s. And when I started getting to become familiar with people and networking and having some pretty good and influential friends in the Arsenal community, let's call it, through our podcast and through just traveling over a lot, I decided to try to put a desire to make a difference in this area with appealing to a group of people in the Gooner family that I happen to know are just really, really, really good people. And at first in 2017, I started putting a little bit of effort into it. I had a couple of connections. I was able to get Alan Smith, who had been on our podcast, to sign a shirt. And it started really small, and it's grown and grown. And each year We grow in awareness. We grow in the connections with the club and with the supporters and all that. And it's a passion project, a labor of love, and it's just really something that I'm touched has grown to the point where it is, where we can get the kind of people to join us and give their time, their effort, and their money towards this cause particularly.
Fantastic. And what's the target? What are we trying to? How much are you raising? You said 26,000 was the number.
It's always kind of a moving target, but I try not to set unrealistic goals. I've learned about SMART goals, the SMART being an acronym, but specific, manageable, I think. But I mean, this year we do a July 1st to July 1st fundraising year, just like the football year is. And the last couple of years, it started off with a summer tour from the States, which gives us great fundraising opportunities. We do FIFA tournaments online. We do in-person fundraising at other times. We have some pretty special things that we're raffling off later in this fundraising year. So I started off this year with a goal of $30,000 to be raised all together, and we're already at $25,385. So I think it's realistic that we could do 50 or 60 this year by the time we hit next June. And the sky's the limit. My eventual hope, my expectation, and what's in the works is that Gooners v Cancer becomes its own charitable organization. The paperwork's been filed; it's in the works, rather than just a campaign to get people to donate to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And as we continue to grow, there are incredible other types of charities. St. Baldrick's, Susan B. Komen. There's other versions of cancer that could certainly use the donations and the money and the support. So my hope is to make it into truly Gooners versus Cancer, and then ultimately through connections with other teams and supporters groups to make it into football versus cancer. But that's kind of down the road a bit. But our goal this year is about to change from 30,000 to 50,000 once I get a chance to update the website because of all the support we've got.
Well, man, that is absolutely incredible. We are honored to be part of this year. So we hope we can put on a bit of a show. Okay, I don't have my little music. I normally have a little buzz, and he goes, the hottest of takes. And then I say, Matt Kandela, what is your hottest of takes? But I don't know whether I'm going to go there right now. Mike Herz, you've come in last, so you're going to go first. You've got to give us the spiciest take that you've got. About Arsenal. It can be current, it can be past, whatever you want. You've been listening to the podcast, we heard Debussy didn't get a fair chance on a previous podcast. Oof. You might want to take that on. So
that was spicy.
That was a spicy take. Debussy gone too soon. But
I hadn't heard that name in about 8 years. It was like a ghost.
I haven't heard it since crashing into the board. Who was that? Arnautovic that pushed him? Son of a bitch.
Unbelievable. So, Mike, going to you first.
Here's one that's slightly controversial, I guess, because there's a lot of people that still see him as the ex-Chelsea player that never did good for us. But I think David Luiz ended up being a superb signing for us. Ooh. Yeah. I don't know. See, it got that Chelsea mojo going on, and I think a lot of people they don't like to hear it. And he had that famous interview where he kind of said, it's better to sleep 2 hours happy or something like that than 8 hours miserable, when we had the transition between Unai Emery and Arteta. But I truly think he ended up being a really good head to keep in our clubhouse, to keep around the locker room, to help guide some younger players. And he left the club loving the Arsenal. It's kind of weird. I think even after he left, Arsenal had a really big win, and he went on Twitter and he kind of posted about it, and it became a whole joke. This is supposed to be your legend, Chelsea. But ultimately, I think he had significantly better time at the Arsenal than many play. So I know that the Wolves red card kind of has become like a bashing thing for him, but I kind of look at that he extremely hard done. I can't believe that happened to him. We'll never see a red card like that again, in my opinion. But
we will.
That's what I'm going to start. Yeah, just with Gabriel or Saliba eventually this season. But that's what I'm going to go with, Pedro.
Mike, that was the spirit of the spicy take. I feel slightly heated after hearing that. I've got to cool down. Aston, we're going to go to you for the second hottest of takes. Can you top what Mike just delivered?
Oh, God. Spicy take. My takes are just, I'm always correct, so it's hard for me to find one that's
Pure spice.
disagreeable.
All
You
the
know what I
time.
mean?
So humble
It's
as well.
just so difficult. Mesut Ozil was better than Cesc Fabregas. I just want the fights. I just want fights.
Out of here.
So do you actually believe that, or were you just trying to come up with something controversial?
In case you guys don't know, he's poking at me at this point.
Also, Arsenal are better than Milan.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's personal.
Yeah. Now it's personal.
So give us a little bit of detail on that. Mesut Ozil, not a fan favorite in the end, but the first couple of seasons, you can't argue with them. Tell us why you think he was better than Cesc Fabregas, a golden child.
Cesc Fabregas had Eduardo Vieira and Adebayor in front of him. Mesut Ozil had Olivier Giroud and almost broke the assist record. I think that there's no player in the time that Mesut Ozil, until his fall of form, especially when Wenger left. I think for when Wenger was here, no player in the history of the Premier League created as many chances as Mesut Ozil. Sorry,
it's spicy. It's spicy. We cannot argue with it. I mean, we've had two absolute screamers to start with. Magic Mike, can you match this, or do you want to tap out? Do you want to leave? Do you want to leave the chat and go away and have a think? Because I'm not sure you can top these two.
If I leave the chat and go away for something, it's not going to be to have a think. Let me tell you that. Having been here drinking Gatorade for the last 8 hours, my spicy take. Now you've just mentioned, Aston, how Mesut Ozil was setting up.
Don't do it. Don't fucking do it.
Getting the most.
He just won a title.
The reason that he was able to get that many assists, and you even mentioned it yourself, is because one of the greatest Arsenal striker of the Emirates era, who came after we moved to the Emirates, is Olivier Giroud.
Boom.
Most underrated and best Arsenal striker, best career as an Arsenal striker since, better than Aubameyang, better than Lacazette, top Arsenal striker, Olivier Giroud.
I believe that's science.
Unbelievable. This is you know what I like about these three hot takes? This is basically a banter era special that we're going to be talking today. And you three have really, I feel like you were born in the banter era to be saying these sorts of things.
Santi Cazorla sucked. How about that?
No,
too far.
You gotta go.
Jumping out of the room.
That's
All
when
right,
you order the ghost pepper wings, but and then you think you can just take it down with one bite, and you regret that. Sorry.
Kandela.
When that's the thing that sinks the show. Out of all the things that you've said, that's the thing that sinks the show.
Well, I've got Jonas's support, and Jonas teaches people for a living, so I think I win.
Kandela, we've got some spicy hot takes. They're all banter era related. I don't know what you're thinking here. I don't know whether you can continue the theme, but hit me with your hottest take.
Yeah, I think I've got to continue the theme. Some of the names I've heard, I've been tuned in for the last few hours. Names I never thought I would have to hear again. Names that at one point I sort of loved. Debussy, Hector Bellerin, David Luiz. David Luiz is a success. Some of the names, Mesut Ozil, Olivier Giroud, and I think that this is all testament to the job that Mikel Arteta has done, because somewhere along the line we accepted that some of those players were the best we could do. We thought that they were potentially world class. We were so happy to have them. I'll tell you what, you look at our team now, none of them get in. None of them. I don't think Hector Bellerin, Mathieu Debussy, I don't think Santi Cazorla gets a look in our team right now. Mesut Ozil, absolutely not. He wouldn't even be in the squad. He'd be somewhere. He'd be on loan somewhere. Trabzonspor maybe. So I think that it's just testament to how far we have come under Mikel Arteta, that he's just completely reimagined our expectation levels. The fact that we now talk about it, should Gabby Jesus start for us? Those are the types of conversation we have. Yes, he's an absolute world-class number 9, but my God, I'm just so grateful that the banter years are behind us and we can move on with our lives.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I'm gonna weigh in on something. I know that a lot of people might have a different view here, but I'm going after Aaron Ramsey right now. I nearly said Aaron
we're gonna
Ramsdale.
fight.
I'm going after Aaron Ramsey.
Let's do
Aaron
it.
Ramsey.
I knew I liked you, Pedro.
I'm here for it.
Aaron Ramsey was not very good technically, and his
Preach.
technical deficiencies were actually his strength when it came to the eye test, because he was out of position so much that those surging runs back made him look great. But I think we saw what happened when he went to Juventus. He was not the player that everybody thought he could be, and we wasted a lot of time with him. And I actually think he wasted his career under Arsene Wenger. I think that if he'd gone to a better coach, he had all the physical attributes to be a top player, great finisher, great eye for a pass, but out of position so much. And
but would you say the same about Steve Gerrard? Because some of the things you're saying to me are sort of the same things that get spoken about Steven Gerrard, and I think there are similarities in the way both of them were able to grab a game by the scruff of the neck, win cup finals single-handedly. Like, are you saying that he was guilty of the same thing?
I think if Steven Gerrard had gone to Mourinho, but he got threatened, didn't he? He got threatened by the gangsters. I think if he'd gone to Chelsea, he would have been a much better player under Mourinho. It was Mourinho who tried to sign him. I think
it was.
Pedro, you say Aaron Ramsey wasn't that good, but I have a question for you.
No, not that he wasn't. He was a good player, but I don't think he was a good technician. So I think that, like, you know, to watch him, he's a very exciting player, but I think he was technically deficient. But I think like some players we just like, and Arsenal fans gravitated toward Aaron Ramsey because he put it all on the field. We liked his body language. Very handsome guy. But I think if you scratch beneath the surface, I don't think he was a good technician.
I think that this is the hottest take, and you don't come up in the TGP podcast and slander the name of Aaron Ramsey. Okay, he's just as untouchable as Giroud. So let's start this off.
I just give
he's not, no, wait. He's not a very good technical player. Is that why he had the third highest created assist in the league after David Silva and Mesut Ozil? He wasn't that technical a player. Is that why he's the fastest player, the fastest midfielder in Arsenal history to reach 50 goals?
That's just genetics.
In our history.
That's genetics.
Not a very good player, yet he used to be the only player in the league that could complete a pass. What was it? I remember this crazy article. It was talking about the most common passes between players in the league for each team. And I remember every single team, it was like the center back out to the fullback, right? In Arsenal, it was Aaron Ramsey to Mesut Ozil. And it was unbelievable that he was able to pull off those passes. His passing metrics are actually out of control good. And I am not going to have the slander that he wasn't a great technical player. He used to score with the back of his foot.
Pedro,
you can't back heel something into Tottenham's goal so many times and not be technically good.
Giroud used to do that all the time. Scored with the back of his foot, except it was behind him and going over the top of his head. So
Giroud was a very technically good player. He had a very good touch. I'll admit that. He was a donkey. He was a donkey otherwise, but he had an incredible touch.
Pedro, the first time Aston and I ever met in person, we stayed up until 3 a.m. in a hotel room down in Sarasota, Florida, arguing about whether Ramsey or Giroud had the better career at Arsenal. So you have opened up the.
It's an open wound. It sounds like
wound
it's just
all possible wounds here.
He's talking about Giroud, the man that gave Ramsey those luxury assists.
That's
for him
exactly right. Neither one of those goals.
That's the Giroud we're talking about.
Neither one of those goals in the FA Cup happens if not for Giroud. Wilshire's goal against Norwich doesn't happen if not for Giroud. Rosicki's goal, I forget who that was against, doesn't happen if not for Giroud. Come on. I mean,
all these players have to score because Giroud couldn't.
This is what I love about Arsenal fans. We're sitting here getting passionate about one of the worst periods of the last 30 years. We're so deeply, we're deeply hurt. We all need therapy. This is therapy for Arsenal fans. Let's talk about the bad times and talk about our favorite players from the bad times. But those were some spicy takes, guys. I'm excited where this show is going to go because we've got an action-packed Banter Year special. But we're going to start on something a lot more current. Nico Pepe exited. And the story was we got a £2.6 million fee. And Arsenal fans, we're precious about money because in the banter years, Arsene Wenger used to say there wasn't any. We used to go through those accounts and try and work out where the cash was and where we could spend money. Arsenal of in politics in America, they sneak bad news out on a Friday because everybody's sipping margaritas and nobody's paying attention. Arsenal waited until the international break to announce that Nico Pepe has been released, contract terminated by mutual consent. So Nico Pepe has left on a free. I want to get your takes, Magic Mike. Give us your take on this. Is this another example of Edu being very good at spending money, but when it comes to selling players, he's not quite right? Or is this just an aftershock of an extremely poor period of mismanagement where we would give players like Nico Pepe 140,000 a week?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where the news came out that we had sold him for a very specific number of 2.6 million.
Fabrizio Romano, I believe.
So he got one wrong then, huh? He got the location wrong, but the terms wrong. You know, to actually have had to cancel his contract is a bit insane. I've stopped trying to defend our ability to sell players because ultimately it really won't end up mattering that much. But yeah, I don't think that this is a sign that's going to continue. Nico Pepe was always going to be one of the last ones that had to come back out through the door from the Mesut Ozil and the Aubameyang and all of that. But I would much rather buy players better than I sell players. There are some teams that are very good at selling and they're not so great at buying. And I would, you know, if I have to choose between the two, I'd rather buy players as long as I know that we're not going to be, you know, unable to buy players because of how poor we are at selling. This sounds exciting. Oh, and we know whose neighborhood that was happening in. Although you hear some interesting sounds in New York. But yeah, I mean, Nico Pepe, forget what we bought him for. That's irrelevant. And I've heard some rumors that we didn't actually pay the full 72 because there were a lot of incentives built into that fee that never got hit. But it really doesn't matter anymore. He didn't have a place at Arsenal anymore. We've made it known that way for 2 years. So, you know, people were either going to sit back and wait for next year to pick him up on a free after yet another loan spell, or someone was going to come in and get him now. This is a weird one that we couldn't get any money for him. Not even $1 million, not even 5 million. Why? I don't get it.
Kandela, are clubs starting to look at Arsenal like we're a bargain basement club? Do they know that if you wait until the end of the window for a player that's not very popular, in the end, Arsenal will give it away for free?
Well, I think let's just chat briefly about recruitment. I think Arsenal recruitment has been phenomenal over the last couple of years, like brilliant. It feels like there's a really coherent plan, a cohesive team working on the objectives, and then we go out, and if we don't get our first choice, we get our second choice. If we don't get our second choice, we get our third choice, and it's all working really, really, really well. I think selling is still, I think it's getting better, as you can see with like Balogun, where it's like we're trying to get rid of someone, and then like let's try and extract the right amount of value for them. But there's still a lot of work to be done, in my opinion, because Pepe was the guy. He had 48 goals and assists in 2 years. Those are good numbers. Like compare those to some of the players that we've got. And I think that the story, I always felt like the story was that he just wasn't very good, that emanated from the club. And I think that with some smarter PR, not just to help the club, but to help the player, it could have been much more like, listen, he's a really, really good player, but actually he's a player who suits a team who plays in transition versus a team who plays with our possession-based approach, which means there are a ton of different places that he could go and play and be really, really successful at. And we were talking on the podcast, you know, Everton. Fulham. Fulham have just signed Alexander Iwobi. It's like, I think Pepe's a better player than Alexander Iwobi, certainly in terms of end product. So I think there's something that could be done with that. But we missed the boat by sending him out on that weird loan last year, where it was basically Arteta just saying, get him away from the first team squad because I only want to work with my core team. And I fear for that because that may have been in his best interest, but I don't think it was in the best interest of the club who were trying to maximize spending. And I'm going to give you another example of a player who I think we should have sold already in the last transfer window. And first of all, a caveat, because I love this player, but the time was right for it to sell him, and that is Emile Smith-Rowe. We are letting his value plummet, and then we're going to be selling him in a year's time for 20%, 30% of what we could have got this season. If Mikel Arteta knew he didn't want him, we should have sold him last January. So I think that's just another case in point of us not being very, very good at selling and letting players' values depreciate when we should be letting them go and letting them get on with their careers.
Matt,
There's no doubt that Pepe is better than Trabzonspor. He is.
Do you think that he really doesn't want ESR like for the foreseeable future, years going forward, or do you think this is more of maybe a bit of an extended Gabby Martinelli type of situation where he's, his injury and his surgery and the players that we brought in, the quality, he just put him down the pecking order, but he still sees a player in there?
I mean, let's just ask the same question to everybody. Does anybody think that Smith-Rowe can still make it at Arsenal? Like make it again for the second time?
I do.
I'm holding my breath to see when the actual calendar gets a little bit more crazier. That's where I'm at right now, to be completely honest with you, Matt. Because going into the season, he played a little bit in preseason. I had the opportunity to see him, and it was great. He looks fresh. He had that summer tournament, again, looking really good. And I was happy to see him seemingly completely fit. So when the league started and game 1 goes by, game 2 goes by, game 3, and I'm like, any minute, man, Trossard's getting minutes. Trossard got to start. Trossard started to, he's the sub. And, I know Jorginho's getting in, but Jorginho's like, he's getting placed in to close games out because we're often just leading by 1 and things are getting a little hectic. And I keep on thinking, dude, something's got to give. He's going to eventually have to play. And so the first 4 games of the season, it hasn't happened yet, but I'm a big fan of the player, and maybe I'm still romanticizing of that period in which he helped us, the Chelsea game and that whole season, how that played out. I'm holding my breath to see that once we start playing every 2 to 3 days, he's going to get minutes. That added on with the club actually went out of the way to say that he was part of the plans, he wasn't for sale. They don't do that very often. I don't think they did that with Tierney. They didn't do that with Pepe. Balogun, it was like he has to come back and fight for his place. Initially, out the gate at the beginning of the summer, the club made a statement or whatever, how that works, the media operates. There was clubs, leaks, et cetera, and it goes, he's not going anywhere. He's part of the plans. He's going to be here with us. So I'm not quite ready to give up hope, and maybe because I am desperately a hopeless romantic when it comes to football. In case you guys don't know that, I'm not a stat-driven person.
He's not romantic when it comes to his family.
I'm romantic too, but I also watched that under-21 tournament, and a lot of people have rewritten it and said, "Well, England won and he was great." He didn't stand out. He just didn't stand out. He looked like an under-21 player. That's not a bad thing. They're all good players, but yeah.
All right, let's get back on topic, guys. Let's get back on topic. Aston, you're a big fan of output merchants. Nico Pepe certainly was an output merchant. A lot of people put up his highlights reel on a regular basis. Did we do Nico Pepe dirty? How was his reputation sunk this badly? For someone that can be so magic and someone that had such a great career when he was at Lille?
I think it's really obvious. I think it was really obvious when it happened. Matter of fact, I think we can mark down when it happened. It wasn't at that Wolves game. Like, he didn't track back, and that was like pretty much it. Like, it reminded me, it had a lot of shades of the Podolski moment under Wenger. I forget who we were playing in the Champions League, and Podolski just didn't track back, and that was the last time we ever saw Podolski. And Pepe had the same thing. Unfortunately, Pepe has a little bit of an attention problem. The way that football's going right now, players like Pepe and players like Ozil, for example, or the luxury player doesn't get to exist in system football anymore. You can't carry a player like that. You need a player that is going to, and I know this might have taken a little magic out of the game, but you need a player that's going to do X, Y, and Z behavior 99 out of 100 times in this position. And Pepe just was not it. Captain Chaos he was. But what I will not have on the flip side, we want to call him an output merchant, but the reality is I think a lot of the reason he gets called a flop is, again, because Chelsea and United want to feel better. But the idea to put Nicolas Pepe in the flop category with the likes of Antony, the likes of Mudryk, the likes of all of these other failed players that you guys have got. Meanwhile, my man over here, I think it was like 18 goals and assists GA in one season. Like that's ludicrous. Sure, he didn't work for us, but there wasn't not a player there. Now, when we talk about selling, I think that, it's really easy to kind of come at Edu about this, but the reality is, if I told you I had a starting international center back that played for a top 6 team, how much would you think he was worth? You'd say 30 or 40 and realize they can't sell Harry Maguire for anything, right? So it's not that simple. It's not every team has these players, especially players that you buy on such high values. When they don't work out, this is what it looks like. I don't think that this should be a mark against Edu or the club.
Mike, Pepe couldn't even get a move to a West Ham, a team that needed a winger. Nobody in the Premier League wanted to touch him. What are they looking at in the data that says that he's not the right player? Do you think that this is just a case of monstrous wages?
Yeah, you read my mind there, Pedro. I think it's the monstrous wages. He was rumored to go to Saudi Arabia a little bit earlier on in the window as well. And there, you could only believe what you want to believe, I guess, but there was something in there that he wasn't convinced with the wages. And ultimately, I think that's what ended up, which is insane to think about. But it's ultimately what I believe ended up being the reason why they terminated the contract. And by all means, I'd rather a termination of contract than paying his full salary for him to go play somewhere else. So that's slightly better. I just checked out his stats because I wanted to use the point that Balogun, similar to Tierney getting loaned out, Balogun left, impressed, he upped his value, and he was able to be sold. Now, granted, there was buying clubs, A, B, his wages are normal because he only signed a contract for us, and C, I mean, he outshined in the French league. So he was doing great over there. I checked out Pepe's stats, 19 games, 6 goals. He didn't do horrible. So I was kind of like thinking in the background, like, okay, maybe he just bombed with his loan, but it wasn't that bad, honestly. I know Antony would kill for 6 goals. Sancho would kill for 6 goals right about now for a season. So I think it's just one of those things where he's one of those last players that came in at like overinflated wages that nobody wants to touch because they're like, we're not going to give you 10, 15, 20 and pay 140. I think it was reported something like that. I think it's a little too much. He's not that elite level of player, and maybe it would have messed with the wage structure of a lot of clubs. So that's my best guess, Pedro. They weren't willing to take that risk and put him on high level contract when even though he was pretty much free, it might destabilize what's going on within the squad. I remember Ben White, when he joined, I read some crazy thing that he was like on 80 grand or something. Like he didn't join us for exorbitant amount of money. And if you're looking at how the club is setting up their wages, there's a structure, right? And Saliba is up there, Saka's up there. To have Pepe within touching reach of them, that would be really damning. So I think that's a whole other can of worms that were open. So I'm gonna time it up to that the wages were extremely crazy. I don't think he has a really great reputation in England for one reason or another. I couldn't really explain to you. Every time he went to France, he performed well. That's exactly what they said about Balogun, performing well, and that's why they wanted 40, 50 million for him. So can't tell you, man. It just got a case of the uglies, as I like to call it. Everybody knew the club wanted him gone, that there was no way back. And I think at that point, it just becomes a little bit of a waiting game. He's still relatively young. They're like, hey, what's one more season without a winger, pretty much? And other clubs had other targets, and they were able to get their targets. So unfortunately, lack of buyers is ultimately what ends up with us getting horrible small transfer fees.
It's painful. It's painful. I think the worst thing about the Nicolas Pepe transfer is it didn't feel like a banter era signing. It felt like we've landed.
Beginning signing.
We've just nabbed the best player in France. He's I think he just won a league title, scored a bunch of goals.
It was the response to "We Care to You," basically.
Yeah. It was a be excited moment, and I think that it actually turned out that we hadn't really scouted him. Raul Signelli was the lead on it. Lille were up to all sorts, and I was writing about it yesterday, and I was like, there were Lille got into all sorts of trouble with the way that they were doing transfers and the agents that they were involving and the inflated fees. We got Nico Pepe for 72 million. There was a rumor that Everton got quoted 52 million, but we paid over the odds. Napoli, who have a transfer under an investigation for Osimhen, they overpaid for Osimhen, but they got Osimhen. And we got lumbered with a guy who can't get a move anywhere. Everybody in the world wants Osimhen. I think they bought him for 80 million. He's probably going to go for 130. We got lumped with the bad player. Maybe if Nico had come good, nobody would put any scrutiny on it. But he is out the door. This does lead into a conversation. I was going to say, is the banter era over? Well, obviously, the banter era is over because Arsenal finished second last year. Everybody's behind the team. We've got a young, dynamic squad. Nobody's being overpaid anymore in this system. And we're all feeling good. But I did want to talk about, when did the banter era end? Because we're going to have a bit of a banter era session. Aston, it sounds like you've got a pretty good memory pulling up Podolski references. I know that this question might come to you a little bit easier than everybody else. When was the moment for you that you knew the banter era was finished and Arsenal were on the path forward?
This is going to sound incredibly cheesy and incredibly hipstery, but it was when Mikel Arteta kind of came through the door. It was the change in rhetoric around the club, because what'd been going on, and I say this is the same thing. You can see this happening at Chelsea and Manchester United right now. There was a sickness inside of the club. There was a sickness, like there were, for example, Nicolas Pepe, for all the crap that we give him, if we were in a better situation, Nicolas Pepe could have banged. But he didn't, because no transfer was going to go right during that period, because the inside of our club was rotten. And Mikel Arteta kind of spoke to that right away. And that really got me on side when I saw that the club was like just ruthlessly cutting players out when Mesut Ozil got his contract terminated. When we didn't have a creative midfielder and Ozil was sitting on the bench and not even making like the game day squad, I knew that Mikel Arteta was the guy that had the balls to bring us back up the table, because we just didn't have a backbone in the club. And that's ultimately where I think you can pretty much say when he walked through the door is when it all changed. Now, you could say maybe after the first FA Cup trophy, you thought that it was in. Maybe it was after the project probably went bang, that Norwich game after the 3 losses in the season that we came 5th. You could say that's when the project went bang, when all those players came in, the Ben Whites, the Tomiyasus, everybody playing all at once. But for me, I think I would probably bookend it with Mikel Arteta. I think that's the cleanest way to cut it, if that makes sense.
Love that answer. Matt Kandela, was there a moment, was there a game, was there an incident where you were like, we're not a banter club anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I think the winners write the story, right? So Mikel Arteta gets to write whatever story he wanted. But I think the first year of Mikel Arteta was a bit of a mess, in my opinion. And, we're obviously so happy with what happened with the FA Cup win, and immediately he made us harder to beat. Remember, we were all saying what a pragmatic manager he was. We were like, the guys, we're not sure about offensively, but at least we don't look like we're going to go up and lose 4, 5, 6-0. Because that's what was happening every time we played away at big clubs. It was just like, lunchtime fixture at Liverpool, brace yourself, it's going to be 25 minutes of hell. And then, we established these sort of patterns of play. But I think that first summer was a complete disaster in terms of like a coherent transfer strategy. We bought some weird players, weird player profiles. And we talk about it a lot, like Willian signing and the way he just hung on to Willian and all of that sort of stuff. I think the biggest credit you can have is that he learned from those mistakes really, really quickly. And I think the board were willing to say we think that there's a huge amount of talent here, and your FA Cup win has brought you some slack. But like, I don't think it was a clear through line of just like, I think there was definitely some things needed to change, and Emile Smith-Rowe saved his job. For me, the moment I really, and I think those transfers of Ramsdale and Ben White and Tommy Yasu and Ødegaard, obviously critical. They could have gone any. I mean, they all turned out really well, and I really liked the strategy behind that. But I think the first game where I thought, okay, I get it, was the City game, when we lost in the last minute. But we absolutely there'd been glimpses of that, but not as you'd only seen glimpses for like 10 or 15 minutes or 20 minutes. And I think in the City game, we lost in the last minute, but it was like, okay, now we see what we are capable of. And we didn't win, but we're all really fired up. And I think there's something quite seismic around, I think it was on New Year's Day. So, that also made a bit of a difference in the way you remember it. It wasn't like buried in like it was like January the 1st, new beginnings, new calendar year, new opportunity. We see what we've got going. But you've got to remember that some of the just 5 or 6 games prior to that was some abject performances against Everton away. I remember, where we lost in the last minute. United away, where we lost. Those 2 defeats in a week completely knocked the stuffing out of the whole club. So there was still a lot of question marks, but that game, the Liverpool away in the League Cup, the 0-0, where you saw a lot of character. You look back and you go, oh, there were lots and lots of signs of something brewing, but banter year's over. I mean, there's been a lot of false dawns, Under Arsene Wenger, we had some great wins. The occasional great win away from home against a big team, beating Chelsea 5-3 and beating City 2-0 and that Cazorla. You could have those glimpses, and I think what we were looking for was something consistent. And I think it wasn't until then that we got it, which was 2021.
Lovely answer. Mike Herz, what are you saying? When was your moment that it really clicked for you?
Well, God, dude. Live chat, I'm sorry if... for me, when the Kroenkes took over and, in my opinion, fired Arsene Wenger, that was the year in which the club made a statement in which we're moving forward. And I understand that they ended up hiring Unai Emery, which had a nicer resume compared to Arteta at that time. And I know that they wanted him, but that whole thing fell through. But that was, for me, the pulling off the Band-Aid, the okay, this has got to end. We've been doing the same thing over and over. There's one head figure at the club that is held shit together for a very long time, but unfortunately started getting a little stale, if you will. So that, for me, is when the club decided to drastically change the course of how they were operating. No more of the still same thing. They tried a short-term-ism type of thing with a lot of older players, a lot of established players, hoping that we could push for Europa and get back in there a little bit faster. It did not work out, but ultimately they didn't do the stick with the same manager thing. They were like, okay, alert, this shit's bad. We got to make a change. And all I wanted to see, essentially, for me, man, is I wanted to see change. And I love the ex-manager. I love Wenger. A lot of good times. We don't have to rehash that one because everybody knows the story there. But the minute they took that massive decision to remove him and start purchasing players, and there's like a direct correlation. There's like, we went from we don't have money, we're broke. And that wasn't Wenger. That was the tug of war that was within the club of Usmanov and Kroenke battling for their percentage of the club. But ultimately, that was like the signal that things were going to be different. Now, I could never in a million years tell you that I was expecting this was going to happen. So we went through some growing pains. I was expecting growing pains. I'm actually almost relieved that didn't come in after Wenger, because it's following up that act was always going to be really difficult. So when we went through the Unai period, it was a little rocky. We unsuccessfully got out of there. They ended up going back to Arteta, and his statement, right? Like Aston said, his first initial press conference in which he spoke about non-negotiables, about how he viewed the club, having just been there on the bench, watching us get hammered. I think it was 3-0 or something at the Emirates. And the manner in which he spoke about the Arsenal, it's like he was watching his own child get beat up and he hated it and he just wanted to bring it back alive. And then he started taking action, so to say, right? Ozil with the umbrella, right? And the son clearly was never going to play that game. Alba, oh, you're late. You're our captain. That's great. We don't accept that over here. It's really hard to not get on board with that. So I know that we had a rough start with him, but at the very least, my whole thing was change in attitude. For so many years, we went through so many players were like, fuck, did he even care that we lost? And I absolutely hate having that mentality. I remember Arsblog had a great interview with Cesc Fabregas, who is factually better than Ozil. Sorry, Aston. Saying that he remembers being on the bus after a loss and he was breaking down crying, and the rest of the squad, or a big portion of the squad, was talking about what was for dinner that night. That is soul crushing for a fan, because every fan would love to have the opportunity to be out there, to experience what they experience and be a player. To think that a player doesn't take a loss so personal cuts most fans and cuts them deep. So for me, that was the biggest statement of intent. Once Kroenke got full ownership, it's not that I'm a big, massive Stan Kroenke guy prior, and it's not because he's American. I was kind of like, okay, well, shit and fuck, this is who we got now, and this is what we're going to roll with. But it's the fact that they stumbled, but they continuously made changes, and they made changes in completely the right direction. So for me, it was very much that day, man, when it was announced that Arsene Wenger was leaving the club. I thought it was almost surreal, having been a fan for 99% of his tenure, if not 100% of his tenure, because actually I started watching him just about a year before he arrived. It was a surreal experience, but then I was like, okay, I think they're ready to move on from this portion of history in the club. I see my co-host looking at, like, smiling and stuff. I'm almost afraid to look at the live chat at this point. So, Pedro, take it away.
No, it's nothing bad. It's Mike's pointing at his watch when Mike, like, literally goes on, like, hour-long rants all the time. And I think
Pedro asked me for a date, and you just talked for 45 minutes.
real quick, Pedro, before you do it, I realize, I don't know why I put so much thought on it. The day Mustafi left. Done.
That's a lovely one. I agree there. I was like, we're a proper club again. Magic God. Mike, you're approaching 9 hours on this podcast. I hope you're feeling good and proud of what you've done. But you really have to crystallize this 8th hour by giving us a good answer here. When did the banter era end? We've had some lovely answers so far.
I'll tell you exactly when it ended, and then we got to go into a couple of housekeeping items with regards to the podcast before we head off the air in about 7 minutes or so, or back onto the air under a different link. So I'll explain that in a second. But the banter era ended in the summer of 2022 with the signing of players in June who were able to come and join, in June and early July, who were able to actually come out on the summer tour with us, bed in, and when we hit the ground running with what was it, 20 some, I mean, mid-20s out of the first 30 points on offer. I think we finally learned our lesson about getting the business done early. For years and years and years, it was, signing players on deadline day. I mean, the coach of our team got signed on deadline day, and the great train race or whatever. It was. We were always getting players after the season started. Then they'd have a slow start, and we said, "Oh well, we've got to let them bed in a little bit." And by then, it was November, and we were, lingering around in 8th to 12th place. Finally, the club learned its lesson. They moved on Gabby. They moved on Zinchenko, who joined us in the middle of the tour. They moved. They had other targets lined up, and finally, I felt like this team understands the things that we've all kind of thought were obvious, and they're acting on them now. And for me, that and the result of the beginning of the season, where they hit the ground running strong and together,
is when the banter era finally ended. It could have gone the day that he signed, and the day that Wenger was sacked, and the day that Arteta signed. Those are excellent answers. But him coming in with the non-negotiables and freezing out these players, it could have gone horribly bad.
I think it's a great point though that it's when you don't feel like as a fan you're seeing something different from what the club is seeing. And every year we were like, why do we have to sign players so late? Why are we unprepared?
Is that not what the banter era is? It's basically when we think. I mean, like, we don't all know better than the club, but we really, really were starting to get pretty sure that we needed more than Petr Cech that one summer, and that we needed to stop bringing in players in the last few days of August, when the season started in the first few days of August, and finally, we were like, okay, this club starts to kind of get it.
Totally. There was like 10 years where we needed a defensive midfielder. Yeah. And it was just like, we need a defensive midfielder, and it was just like, no.
And we let Conte go to Chelsea and signed a box to box who we all wanted to be a defensive midfielder instead. So yeah, I mean, to me, the banner era is, everyone, both our fans and other fans, saying, why did the club just do that? Are you serious right now? And no one's saying that right now. I mean, they are about Havertz maybe, but that's a different discussion. So Pedro, is it all right if I kind of take the reins back? First of all, I was texting with Sophie, who speaks glowingly of you, and rightfully so. She said he's very, very good on air, and I'm hoping I got my reference right, but I said you're like a 5 Live DJ. Is 5 Live
5 Live DJ? That's very kind.
Yeah, I mean,
I love Sophie. She's the best.
She is, and she'll be joining us later on, and she's maybe as smooth as you are on the air, but I mean, the moment you took over from me, all the ums and the ahs came out, and the just the weirdness that you get when I'm leading a podcast, and that was the most professionally run hour. So I want to thank you for doing that, Matt. It's a great to meet you for the first time.
Yeah, you too. Great to meet you guys, all of you.
And what I promised to do at the beginning, and now I'm going to do it at the end, really quick. The 4 questions. We've got your top 6, your first manager to get sacked, your Ballon d'Or winner, and a spicy take. If you want to use the same spicy take, but this is actually about what's going to happen in this year of football. Something you wouldn't expect to happen, and we could either laugh at it or say, "Wow, he really saw that coming." First, I'll go to you, Pedro. Top 6.
Top 6.
No particular order.
Arsenal, City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Brighton, Spurs.
All right.
Chelsea over United.
No United, yeah. All right. And Matt.
I'll do City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester United, Newcastle, and Brighton.
Excellent. All right. First manager to get sacked in the Premier League. Matt.
I'm gonna have a bit of fun with it. I don't know if this is necessarily true, but I'm gonna roll with it, and I'm gonna go Pochettino.
Oh, I would love to see that.
And
I think he's such a fraud.
And the reason for that is I've watched quite a lot of Chelsea this season, and they're terrible. Like, I know everyone's going, oh, they got so much talent, and you're just waiting for it to click. It's gonna take. I just can't see it, and I don't see any real system or philosophy or anything. And I think you're looking at the games that they're playing. I mean, Forest outplayed them, and I think it's going to get worse for them. And they've got this brutal run coming up, and they've got coaches who don't understand. They've got owners who don't understand how to run a football club, and so I just think that there could be. I think it's more likely to be a huge amount of tension flaring up between the ownership and the coach that could lead to him going before Christmas.
Wow. Okay. And Pedro, your first coach?
Sean Dyche.
Yeah.
Sean Dyche.
Now, will it be right before we play them, or will it be?
No, it won't favor us in any way, shape, or form. I think
if we spank him, he could start his Chelsea career against us and end it against us.
Yeah, very true.
His Everton career, sorry. And Pedro, while we're on you, we'll do the Ballon d'Or winner.
it should be Haaland. Like, I'm getting so bored of Messi and Ronaldo just getting it because they play for Madrid. Like, look how many Barcelona players are in those nominations this year. Totally undeserved. But it should be Haaland. I mean, the guy's a complete freak, and he won the treble last year. It should be him, but it won't. It will be the last of the nostalgia pieces. But it's Messi, so I guess we just have to accept it.
And Matt,
yeah, I think it'll be Messi. Rodri could have been a shout. I mean, I think he's really established himself as the real linchpin to everything that City have done and achieved. But yeah.
Okay.
Haaland probably deserves it.
And a surprise prediction in world football for this year. Could be anything. Matt.
Saudi Arabia and the Saudi Arabian clubs in the Champions League
next season, or all right, and Pedro.
I think mine was going to be the same. Mine was the same as Elliot's. I think Ten Hag is going to get found out big time this season. I think it's already started. I think it's such a mess at United. So many poor decisions, so many problems with their players. He's starting to blame people, and that's usually the first sign that things aren't going to go well. It feels very Mourinho-esque what's going on at United, and I think he's going to get found out.
Yeah, I think that's on its way to happening. All right. Before we draw the winner for this hour, and the prize for this hour is a Zenith coin, the Highbury Squad Zenith coin. And this has been donated by the Highbury Squad and Zenith coins, of course. And if you haven't seen what a Zenith coin looks like, I don't have a video of the Highbury Squad one, but this is Zenith coins right here. It's a nice, thick, juicy piece of hardware with your favorite team on it, of course, and that's going to be given away to a lucky winner in just a second. This is the end of part 1 of 3. There are limits to how much YouTube will record and keep recorded for later, and I don't want to lose this magic that we're creating. So we're splitting it into 3 9-hour segments. All you have to do, I've already changed it and forwarded it. So all you should have to do to get to the next one is maybe just hit refresh on your screen. But at worst, if that doesn't work, go once again to 27hourpod.com, and that should take you to part 2 of 3, which we're going to start with a brand new group of folks if who are probably already waiting for us in there. And so it might be a minute or two off the air. We'll make it up to you at the end so that we've got injury time because we were 3 minutes late starting. So
28-hour pod.
So yeah, real quick, we're gonna get the winner of the Highbury Squad branded Zenith coin, and the winner,
but per Sophie's request.
Well done. The winner is Michael Bedard. Michael Bedard from Detroit, Michigan, has won. I recall that because he was down in Orlando the year that the club decided at the last minute that they weren't able to come, but we all went there anyway, and we raised money and we drank beer. So congratulations, Michael. You have won the Highbury Squad Zenith coin. And so Pedro and Matt, please let us know where we can find you, the great stuff that you're doing, the entertainment. I mean, if you haven't, I mean, you're probably here because they brought you here, but if you were here anyway and you haven't watched the Arsenal Opinion, haven't read LeGrove, please, share with our listeners and our supporters of our charity where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at LeGrove, legrove.co.uk if you want some daily hits of Arsenal goodness. And our podcast that Matt and I both co-host is called The Arsenal Opinion. We go live on the whistle. And we're there 3-4 times a week. So come join the party.
The moment the whistle goes on the game, we're live. So think of it as a bit like if you're not there in person, it's a bit like walking to the pub and you can come and find a group of people prepared for some frequently knee-jerk reactions immediately after the game.
Real knee-jerk, 100%.
Yeah,
And-
I went back and watched the one after the whistle for United, and let's just say you guys were in good spirits at that very moment in time. Remember,
Mike, just want to say a quick one. Thank you for having us on your podcast and letting us be part of this. I think it's a truly special cause that you're working towards, and this is I just cannot imagine the admin that you put in to get this going. So fair play to you. And Aston, Mike, it was great having you to deliver some extremely spicy takes. You guys did a brilliant job. We loved it. Thank you.
Thank
we're gonna have to take a quick second and water our mouths down because it's just too much spice was in this hour. So
yeah, usually I don't bring that kind of spice around white folk, but you know, here we are. I'll let them know in the restaurants you can actually take it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And I can't think of a better way of ending our first segment of 3 by saying thank you for everybody. Please come on over if it's 3 a.m. where you are in England or Ireland or wherever. I mean, you're into it this far. How are you going to go to sleep now? If it's earlier, please come with us. 27hourpod.com should take you to the next segment, and we will see you on the other side in just a minute. And I will end the stream by saying,
Hey Gooners, this is Alan Smith.
This is Kevin Campbell.
Lee Dixon.
Colin Lewin.
It's Gary Lewin.
Charles Watts.
Dan Potts.
James Benge.
Danny.
Tom from the Gooner Talk here.
Ryan O'Cross. Simon Collins. You may know me from the Evening Standard.
You may know me for my time at Arsenal.
You may know me from Arsenal or even the Hybrid Squad.
I'm a Birdcat Wonderland.
Being that physio sat on the bench next to Arsenal with my rubber gloves on.
The former Arsenal physio.
The Emirates press box, from writing, from Twitter.
From goal.com, from Twitter, from YouTube.
Football is the beautiful game and it brings us all together.
Sometimes there are things even more important than wins and losses.
And yes, even transfers.
Every 30 seconds, someone in this world gets diagnosed with blood cancer.
The Leukemia and Lymphoma Society works towards curing blood cancers
and provides support to families currently dealing with these diseases.
Gooners vs Cancer was started in 2017
by a lifelong Gooner who lost his father to leukemia way too young.
Since 2017, Gooners v Cancer has raised
over $75,000 for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society.
And we need your help to keep the fundraising going in this year's campaign.
Every donation helps.
Every donation helps.
Every donation helps.
Every donation helps, no matter the size.
And every donation enters you into the Gooner raffle,
where you have a great chance to win amazing Arsenal prizes,
including game tickets, stadium tours,
signed men and women's shirts,
and maybe a retro signed shirt by yours truly, Lee Dixon.
Me, yours truly.
Yours truly, Super Kev Campbell.
So much more.
It's easy to take part.
Just go to www.goonersvcancer.com
and donate directly to the charity.
Pick the raffle prizes you want to enter to win,
and wait for the drawings at the end of the campaign.
Again, that's www.goonersversuscancer.com.
We all know that victory grows out of harmony.
Victory grows out of harmony.
Victory grows out of harmony.
With your help, we'll be victorious against blood cancer once and for all.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you for your support.
Thanks for your support.
Thanks for your support.
Thank you for your support.